Look at you, standing there with that beautiful kind of damage in your chest, that dangerous kind of silence in your mouth, that pressure in your head that made everybody whisper your name like you were some kind of cautionary tale. They looked at you and decided the story was over. They saw the exhaustion in your eyes, the distance in your stare, the way you stopped explaining yourself, and they came to the most deliciously stupid conclusion they could possibly make. They thought you lost your mind, and that was perfect, because while they were busy diagnosing your collapse, you were studying their patterns. While they were gossiping about how far you'd fallen, you were memorizing every fake smile, every slick little betrayal, every moment they switched up on you the second you stopped being useful. They thought you were unraveling. You were observing. They thought you were cracking under pressure. You were becoming pressure. They thought you were too broken to think straight, too overwhelmed to move smart, too wounded to ever be dangerous again. That's the thing about people. They only respect pain they can understand. The moment your pain gets quiet, strategic, unreadable, they panic, because chaos they can laugh at. But silence makes people nervous. Silence means something is loading. Silence means you're not reacting anymore. Silence means the version of you they used to manipulate has started dying off. And now they're stuck in a room with someone they no longer know how to read. And you know what really shook them? It wasn't the sadness. It wasn't the anger. It wasn't even the breakdown. It was the fact that you came back colder, sharper, cleaner, less available, less emotional with the wrong people, less eager to prove your heart to those who treated it like a toy. They expected tears, they expected begging, they expected desperate paragraphs, emotional reactions, public meltdowns, messy explanations, one more chance speeches, one more conversation, one more attempt to make people understand what they did to you. But instead you disappeared into yourself. That's when the fear started, because when somebody hurts you and you still keep chasing them, they feel powerful. But when somebody hurts you and you become disciplined, they start replaying everything they did. They start wondering what you know. They start wondering what you're planning. They start wondering why your energy changed, why your eyes changed, why your presence doesn't feel wounded anymore, why you stopped reaching, why you stopped arguing, why you stopped trying to rescue people from the consequences of how they treated you. See, they thought revenge was going to look loud, explosive, emotional, obvious. They thought revenge would be some dramatic crash out they could point at and use against you. They wanted you reckless. They wanted you unstable. They wanted you so consumed by pain that you'd destroy yourself before you ever became a threat to them. But you did something far more terrifying. You got patient. You let the pain sit in your bones long enough to teach you. You let the betrayal burn long enough to wake something ancient up inside you. You let the humiliation season you. You let the disrespect sober you up. You stopped asking, why did they do me like that? And started asking the only question that actually changes lives. What did this reveal? Oh, and what it revealed was ugly. It revealed who only loved the version of you that had no boundaries. It revealed who needed you exhausted so they could stay comfortable. It revealed who smiled in your face and quietly prayed for your downfall because your light made them feel small. It revealed who enjoyed your confusion because clarity would mean they couldn't control you anymore. It revealed who was never misunderstanding you. they understood you perfectly. They just benefited from pretending they didn't. That realization changes a person. Because once you understand that some people didn't accidentally hurt you, they strategically used you, a switch flips. You stop romanticizing loyalty. You stop confusing history with trust. You stop calling bare minimum behavior love. You stop handing your softness to people who weaponize vulnerability and then act shocked when you become harder to reach. And the wild part, they still thought your distance was weakness. They thought you went quiet because you had nothing left. They thought your withdrawal meant defeat. They thought your numbness meant surrender. They didn't know you were in the lab, building, rewiring, detaching, turning every memory into data, every insult into fuel, every lie into clarity, every sleepless night into vision. That's the revenge they never see coming. Not chaos, not noise, not destruction, transformation. The kind that ruins every old access point people had to you. The kind that makes their old tricks stop working. The kind that turns their confidence into confusion. The kind that forces them to watch you become someone their manipulation can no longer reach. Because let's be honest, the deepest revenge was never about screaming the loudest. It was never about posting cryptic shots. It was never about proving how hurt you were. It was about becoming so solid, so self-respecting, so mentally dangerous that the very people who played with your name start choking on the realization that they created the one version of you they can never control again. You didn't lose your mind. You lost your tolerance. You lost your willingness to keep giving people the benefit of the doubt when they kept handing you evidence. You lost your addiction to over-explaining. You lost your need to be seen as nice by people committed to treating you dirty. You lost your old habit of shrinking to keep the peace. You lost your fear of outgrowing people who felt entitled to your old softness. And when that old version of you died, everybody who benefited from it called you crazy. Of course they did. People always call it madness when they no longer have access. They call it pride when you finally have standards. They call it cold when you stop bleeding for free. They call it revenge when you simply stop volunteering for your own disrespect. That's why your silence bothered them more than your pain ever did. Because your silence had structure, it had intention, it had teeth. It said, "I finally see you." And there is nothing more uncomfortable for a manipulator than being fully seen by the person they underestimated. You started moving different. Your circle got smaller. Your words got fewer. Your instincts got louder. You stopped telling everybody your plans because you finally understood something most people learn way too late. Not everybody clapping for you wants you to win. Some people ask what you're doing just to measure how to stay ahead of you. Some people comfort you only to collect information. Some people lean in close not because they care, but because they want a front row seat to your weakness. So you learned to keep things sacred. You learned to let people hear about your growth after it's already happened. You learned that mystery is protection. You learned that privacy is power. You learned that when your life is under construction, not everybody deserves the blueprint. And that changed the game. Because now, while they're busy performing, you're positioning. While they're posting, you're preparing. While they're talking, you're mastering. While they're assuming you're still drowning in the same pain they left you in, you're building a mind so disciplined it scares even you sometimes. That version of you, dangerous. not because it wants to destroy, but because it no longer fears losing what was never loyal to begin with. That's freedom. That's when your whole posture changes. You stop negotiating with disrespect. You stop explaining your value to people committed to misunderstanding it. You stop auditioning for spaces that only tolerated you when you were convenient. You stop watering dead things and calling yourself patient. You stop trying to heal in the same rooms that taught you to doubt your worth. And then something delicious happens. The people who thought you were done start hearing about you. Not from you. Never from you. From the results. From the shift. From the energy. From the fact that you don't look broken anymore. You look focused. You don't sound bitter anymore. You sound certain. You don't feel desperate anymore. You feel unavailable. And now the same people who were so sure you'd never recover are forced to sit with a brutal truth. Your breakdown didn't bury you. It introduced you to yourself. That's why you can't regret what broke you. I know that sounds insane when you remember the nights you almost came apart. The overthinking, the chest pain, the rage, the numbness, the way your own reflection felt unfamiliar, the way disappointment piled so high you started questioning whether being good even mattered anymore. I know. But listen carefully. That pain stripped the fantasy out of your life. It showed you who was real when there was nothing flashy left to gain from you. It exposed who only loved your light but had no interest in your healing. It taught you that some people prefer the bleeding version of you because a healed version might finally leave. It forced you to develop discernment, and discernment is a gift wrapped in heartbreak. Now you notice things faster. You notice the energy shift before the betrayal arrives. You notice the envy hiding inside fake support. You notice the passive disrespect disguised as jokes. You notice the way some people only reach out when they need your softness, your ideas, your labor, your loyalty, your emotional availability. You notice. And because you notice, you no longer get caught the same way. That right there is revenge. Not revenge that destroys your soul. Revenge that upgrades it. Revenge that says, you don't get to use me as a lesson while I stay the same. Revenge that turns pain into standards. Revenge that turns betrayal into instinct. Revenge that turns humiliation into hunger. Revenge that turns abandonment into independence so deep that nobody can ever threaten you with their absence again. You know how powerful that is? To become someone who no longer begs for what should have been given with love. To become someone who doesn't panic when people leave because you finally understand that some exits are divine. To become someone who can sit alone without feeling worthless. That's not a small thing. That's a revolution inside the mind. And revolutions are messy. That's why from the outside, it looked like you were losing it. You were sleeping weird, thinking too much, pulling away, questioning everything. Some days you were fired up. Some days you were empty. Some days you wanted to fight. Some days you wanted to vanish. Some days you hated what they did to you. Some days you hated that you let it happen. Some days you missed people you had no business missing. Some days you wanted one apology, one truth, one moment of honesty. But healing doesn't always look elegant. Sometimes it looks like confusion before clarity. Sometimes it looks like isolation before wisdom. Sometimes it looks like emotional demolition before identity. People who have never rebuilt themselves will always mistake reconstruction for madness. Let them. Because while they're laughing at the mess, They don't realize you're pouring concrete. And when the foundation finishes setting, good luck moving you. That's the part nobody warns people about. Once a person gets tired enough, hurt enough, disrespected enough, embarrassed enough, something in them becomes unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because illusions stop working. You stop flinching at the truth. You stop decorating pain with pretty excuses. You stop explaining red flags away. You stop betraying your own intuition just to maintain access to people who never deserved it. You become harder to fool, harder to tempt, harder to break. And people feel that. They feel it in the way you enter a room now. They feel it in the way you don't rush to fill silence. They feel it in the way your kindness now comes with standards. They feel it in the way you can love deeply without abandoning yourself. That's what scares them, not your anger, your control. Because anger is easy to provoke, control is untouchable. Now when someone tries the same old game, they don't get the same old version of you. They get boundaries, they get distance, they get calm, they get that terrifying little pause where you look at them and they realize you're measuring the situation, not emotionally drowning in it. They get consequences, not speeches. That's a different creature entirely. And let's talk about the real trap you built, because this is where it gets beautiful. The trap was never for them. Not really. The trap was for the version of you that kept settling. You trapped your own self-sabotage. You trapped your people-pleasing. You trapped your fear of rejection. You trapped your craving to be understood by those committed to twisting your words. You trapped that old reflex that wanted to chase closure from people who enjoy withholding it. You trapped your own weakness, stared it in the face and said, "You don't run this anymore." That's why your energy feels different now, because you're no longer split in half. One part of you wanting peace, another part of you addicted to familiar pain, one part of you knowing better, another part of you still reaching back, one part of you craving respect, another part of you tolerating crumbs. No. Now there's alignment, and alignment is lethal, because once your mind, your standards, your instincts, and your discipline start moving together, your whole life begins to shift. You stop leaking energy into the wrong battles. You stop wasting your best years trying to explain yourself to emotionally dishonest people. You stop confusing chaos with passion. You stop calling survival love. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop calling being tolerated acceptance. And the rewards start showing up quietly at first. Peace, better decisions, clearer instincts, stronger focus, a deeper voice in your own head, a new relationship with solitude, a sharper eye for who deserves access. You begin attracting differently because you are finally seeing differently. And then the threat changes sides. It's not them threatening your peace anymore. It's your growth threatening every dynamic built on your smallness. That's why some people get weird when you heal. Your healing exposes the role they played in your suffering. Your discipline exposes their laziness. Your self-respect exposes their games. Your boundaries expose their entitlement. Your glow-up, mental, emotional, spiritual, makes their old treatment of you look even uglier in hindsight. Good. Let it. Let them sit with that discomfort. Let them wonder when exactly you stopped being the person they could mishandle. Let them feel the distance. Let them realize too late that access to you was a privilege, not a guarantee. Because too many people only understand your value when your energy is no longer available on demand. And no, you don't need to announce anything. That's the beauty of it. Real power doesn't scream. Real power rearranges. It moves furniture in the soul. It changes appetite. It changes standards. It changes what you laugh at, what you tolerate, what you answer, what you chase, what you walk away from. That's what you built in the dark while they thought you were losing your mind. A new nervous system, a new standard, a new code, a new identity, one that doesn't need applause, one that doesn't need permission, one that doesn't need revenge in the childish sense, because your existence, your discipline, your refusal to break the same way twice is already the kind of revenge most people can't survive watching. So when they look at you now and try to figure out what happened, let them wonder. Let them replay your old silence and realize it wasn't emptiness. It was calculation. Let them remember the days they mocked your pain and realize they were witnessing the birth of someone they would never be able to manipulate again. Let them choke on the fact that the very pressure they applied to crush you ended up forging you into someone far more precise, far more disciplined, far more dangerous than the version they underestimated. And you keep going. You keep building. You keep becoming. You keep letting your standards get so high that disrespect can't breathe near you. You keep protecting your focus like it's sacred. You keep making your inner world so strong that no external betrayal can send you back to being easy to play with. You keep moving like somebody who has seen the truth and cannot be seduced by illusions anymore, because the old you wanted closure. The new you wants control. The old you wanted fairness. The new you wants clarity. The old you wanted people to feel sorry. The new you wants results. And results are ruthless. Results don't care who doubted you. Results don't argue. Results don't explain. Results just arrive, stand there cold and undeniable, and force everybody to confront what they got wrong about you. So let them keep their little story about how you cracked. Let them keep telling themselves you were unstable, emotional, dramatic, done. Meanwhile, you become the kind of person who can walk through betrayal without becoming cheap, walk through humiliation without losing dignity, walk through loneliness without running back to poison, walk through doubt without abandoning the mission. That's not insanity. That's evolution with scars on it. That's wisdom built in places no one clapped for. That's self-respect pulled from the wreckage. That's what happens when pain stops being a prison and starts becoming a weapon in the right hands. And now the room feels different when you enter, doesn't it? Now your silence speaks before you do. Now your standards arrive before your smile does. Now your absence teaches lessons your presence never could. Now the people who once played with your heart have to face the one outcome they never planned for. You didn't stay broken. You got smarter. You got colder where it mattered. You got cleaner in your thinking. You got ruthless about peace. You got serious about protecting your mind. You got addicted to becoming someone your past would not even recognize. So no, they were wrong. You didn't lose your mind. You lost your fear. You lost your need to be loved by those who only valued your weakness. You lost your appetite for self-betrayal. You lost your attachment to old versions of yourself that kept saying yes when your soul was screaming no. And in that loss, something magnificent was born, something strategic, something disciplined, something beautifully unforgiving toward anything that threatens your future. So keep that look in your eyes, that unreadable look. That look that says the storm already happened, and you survived it, studied it, learned its language, and now carry weather inside your chest. Keep that energy where they can feel it, but never fully understand it. Keep becoming the proof that pain can sharpen instead of shatter. Keep becoming the consequence of everybody who mistook your heart for weakness. Keep becoming the kind of person who no longer needs revenge handed to them by fate. Because every disciplined step, every boundary, every silent level up, every refusal to go back, every moment you choose your future over your old wounds, every day you deny broken people access to the healed version of you, every time you turn pain into power instead of performance, every single time you rise without warning and move without explanation, the trap closes a little tighter. The truth gets a little louder, and the world starts realizing what they should have known from the start. The most dangerous person in the room is never the one making noise. It's the one who went quiet, got focused, and came back impossible to play with. Good. Let's tell the truth they were never ready to hear. They laughed at you because it was easier than admitting they saw something in you they couldn't control. They called you a joke because mockery is the favorite weapon of people who feel small, standing next to something they don't understand. They dismissed you. They rolled their eyes at your ideas. They smirked at your silence. They turned your pain into entertainment. They made your effort look pathetic. They treated your hunger like delusion. They looked at your ambition like it was some cheap little fantasy that would collapse the second real life hit you in the mouth. And maybe real life did hit you in the mouth. Maybe more than once. Maybe hard enough to make your own reflection look unfamiliar. Maybe hard enough to make you question whether they were right. But here's the part nobody warned them about. A person who survives humiliation becomes dangerous in a way comfort can never understand. Because comfort makes people soft. Applause makes people lazy. Easy validation makes people weak. But being laughed at, being doubted, being underestimated in public, that does something else to you. That changes your blood temperature. That rewires your instincts. That teaches you how to build in silence, how to take disrespect and turn it into fuel, how to smile without explaining yourself, how to sit in a room full of people who think they've already figured you out, while you quietly become the worst mistake they ever made. They thought calling you a joke would break your confidence. Instead, it stripped you clean. It took away your need to be liked. It took away your addiction to approval. It took away your dependence on praise. It took away your fear of looking crazy. And when a person no longer needs permission to become who they are, that person becomes a problem. That's what they don't understand about you. They thought they were watching your downfall, but they were standing in the front row of your construction, brick by brick, wound by wound, sleepless night by sleepless night. Every betrayal shaped your discipline. Every insult sharpened your focus. Every fake smile taught you who not to trust. Every moment you got ignored trained you to stop performing for crowds and start building for reality. And reality does not care who got the most laughs in the beginning. Reality only cares who's still standing at the end. That's why the same people who used to call you dramatic now watch you in silence. The same people who used to call you weird now study your moves. The same people who said you'd never be anything now can't go 5 minutes without hearing your name somewhere. 'Cause the joke changed. At first, they thought the joke was you. Now the joke is them. Now they're the ones explaining why the person they underestimated keeps rising. Now they're the ones pretending they always knew you had something special. Now they're the ones trying to rewrite history because the version where they mocked you doesn't look too good anymore. Now they're the ones choking on their own words while your existence keeps making them uncomfortable. And let's be honest, that discomfort is not accidental. Your growth exposes people. It exposes the friends who only liked you when you were uncertain. It exposes the family members who acted supportive, but secretly expected you to stay small. It exposes the co-workers who smiled in your face, but celebrated your mistakes in private. It exposes the people who loved the wounded version of you, because that version never threatened their position. See, a lot of people don't actually hate failure. They hate transformation. They can tolerate your pain. They can tolerate your confusion. They can tolerate your breakdown. They can even tolerate your struggle. What they cannot tolerate is your evolution. Because the moment you start changing for real, the whole dynamic shifts. You stop asking. You start deciding. You stop chasing. You start choosing. You stop begging to be included. You become impossible to ignore. You stop shrinking to keep people comfortable. You grow until their comfort is no longer your concern. That's when their tone changes. That's when the little jokes get sharper. That's when the comments start sounding more personal. That's when the energy gets weird. That's when people begin throwing shade disguised as concern. That's when they call you arrogant for finally having standards. That's when they call you cold for no longer giving unlimited access. That's when they call you fake because you stopped bleeding in public. And you know what's funny? Most people only loved your good heart when it came with weak boundaries. They liked you when you always forgave. They liked you when you over-explained. They liked you when you gave second, third, 10th chances. They liked you when you stayed available. They liked you when you kept dimming yourself to make everybody else feel brighter. But the second you grew a spine, suddenly you changed. Yes, you changed. That was the point. You were supposed to. You were not born to remain digestible. You were not built to stay easy to handle. You were not put here to keep your power in a cage so insecure people could feel safe around you. You were not given vision just to water it down for people who confuse limitation with realism. You were not dragged through all that pain just to come out softer for those who never protected you in the first place. No, you were supposed to come out sharper, clearer, harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to replace, harder to forget. And that's exactly why your name started sticking. Not because you begged for attention, not because you played the loudest, not because you forced people to notice you, but because there is something unforgettable about a person who was publicly underestimated and privately rebuilt themselves into something undeniable. That kind of energy follows people home. They think about you when things get quiet. They compare others to you without admitting it. They watch from a distance and act casual. They ask about you in indirect ways. They keep tabs for no reason they can explain. They say they don't care, but somehow they know every move. Because people never fully recover from misjudging someone who turns into power. That haunts them. It haunts them because it forces a confrontation with their own blindness. It haunts them because it reminds them they were arrogant. It haunts them because they had access to greatness and treated it like comedy. It haunts them because somewhere deep down, they know they saw something real in you early on and chose to disrespect it anyway. And now your name has weight. Now your silence speaks louder than their gossip ever did. Now your presence changes the room before you even say a word. Now your consistency is louder than their old opinions. Now your energy alone makes people reveal themselves. Now your discipline makes excuses sound childish. Now the life you are building is becoming a mirror people can't stand looking into, because every level you rise to asks them a question. Why didn't they take you seriously? Why did they laugh? Why did they betray someone who only needed time? Why did they assume struggle meant weakness? Why did they confuse patience with powerlessness? Why did they think quiet meant empty? A quiet person with vision is one of the most dangerous things on earth. Because while everyone else is busy announcing themselves, that person is learning, adjusting, observing, enduring, stacking skill, stacking pain tolerance, stacking perspective, stacking control. That's you. And let's not sanitize it. A part of you was born in pressure. A part of you became fluent in disappointment. A part of you learned how to breathe in chaos because calm was never handed to you. A part of you stopped expecting rescue a long time ago. A part of you got so familiar with being doubted that now disbelief feels normal, almost useful. You don't panic when people question you anymore. You don't fall apart every time you're misunderstood. You don't chase people down to fix false narratives. You don't waste your life proving your humanity to those committed to misreading it. You let time handle certain conversations. You let results say what emotions used to say. You let your work enter rooms your voice was once denied from. You let your evolution answer disrespect. That is power, not constant anger, not non-stop revenge fantasies, not loud, reckless chaos. Real power is colder than that. Real power is control. It's being able to look at disrespect and not break your mission for it. It's knowing exactly what people said about you and still refusing to become smaller because of it. It's hearing the laughter and still building. It's taking the rejection and still showing up. It's surviving the embarrassment and still refusing to quit. That's where your legend started. Not in applause, not in victory, not when people finally clapped. It started when quitting would have made perfect sense and you didn't. It started when nobody would have blamed you for disappearing, and you stayed. It started when your confidence was bleeding out, and you kept moving anyway. It started when your own mind turned into a battlefield, and you still found a way to drag yourself forward. It started when the people you would have gone to for support became the reason you needed strength in the first place. That creates a different kind of soul. A soul that does not romanticize pain but knows how to use it. A soul that doesn't trust easy words anymore. A soul that reads energy fast. A soul that knows some smiles are just masks with teeth behind them. A soul that understands not everybody clapping for you wants you to win. A soul that has learned to stop handing out access just because someone knows your name. And that's another reason they can't escape you now. You became harder to reach, not unreachable. Just no longer available for nonsense, no longer available for fake support, no longer available for half respect, no longer available for one-sided loyalty, no longer available for people who vanish when you struggle and reappear when you shine. No longer available for anyone who only wants proximity to your light after mocking your darkness. That version of you is dead. The version that kept explaining itself to deaf people. The version that kept offering grace to people who weaponized it. The version that kept hoping loyalty would be reciprocated just because you gave it honestly. The version that kept thinking love and access were the same thing. Gone and good. Because some versions of you have to die so the real one can breathe. You know what else they hate? They hate that you became disciplined without becoming boring. They hate that you became wiser without becoming weak. They hate that you became harder to fool without losing your spark. They hate that pain didn't turn you into a victim forever. They hate that what should have destroyed you ended up refining you. They hate that every attempt to reduce you somehow expanded you instead. That messes with people. People are comfortable when cause and effect make sense. They expect humiliation to create fragility. They expect betrayal to create bitterness. They expect rejection to create insecurity. They expect mockery to create silence. But you didn't respond the way the script said you should. They threw dirt. You grew roots. They threw doubt. You built standards. They threw disrespect. You built self-respect. They threw distance. You built independence. They threw shame. You built identity. That is why your name feels bigger now, because it carries a story. Not the story they told about you, the real one. The one where you were exhausted but kept going. The one where you had no support but found strategy. The one where you were emotionally wrecked but still learned how to function. The one where you got laughed at in one season and became unignorable in the next. The one where your losses didn't make you pathetic, they made you precise. Precision changes everything. Once pain teaches you precision, you stop wasting your life. You stop wasting words. You stop wasting trust. You stop wasting energy on people who enjoy confusion. You stop wasting love on people who only visit when they need something. You stop wasting time trying to be fully understood by people committed to seeing a smaller version of you. You become selective, and selective people scare chaotic people, because chaos feeds on your openness. Chaos feeds on your confusion. Chaos feeds on your self-doubt. Chaos feeds on your need to explain. But once you become selective, the whole game changes. Now people have to earn access. Now they have to meet standards. Now they can't just stroll into your life with charm and leave with pieces of you. Now your peace has security. Now your mind has filters. Now your heart is no longer an unlocked door in a violent neighborhood. That kind of transformation makes your whole presence heavier. People feel it. They feel that you don't need to talk a lot anymore. They feel that you don't move from desperation. They feel that you're no longer seeking permission to exist. They feel that your confidence is no longer fragile enough to be controlled by opinions. They feel that something in you has settled into certainty, and certainty terrifies people who were betting on your collapse, because your collapse was part of their comfort plan. They thought you'd stay confused. They thought you'd stay reactive. They thought you'd keep proving them right with emotional choices. They thought you'd sabotage yourself from the inside. They thought your insecurity would save them from ever having to respect you. But then you did something they didn't prepare for. You got serious. Not loud, serious. You got serious about your focus, serious about your time, serious about your healing, serious about your craft, serious about your standards, serious about your future, serious enough to become unrecognizable. And once a person gets serious, everything shifts. The distractions that once worked stop working. The guilt that once worked stops working. The manipulation that once worked stops working. The bait that once worked stops working. The old insults stop landing because the person they were aimed at no longer exists. That's the real revenge nobody talks about. Not destruction, not chaos. Transformation so complete that old weapons can't even find a target. Imagine how frustrating that is for the people who built their identity around underestimating you. Imagine how strange it is for people who felt tall only because you were still kneeling. Imagine what it does to their ego when the person they laughed at becomes the standard they can't stop comparing others to. That's where you are heading, not into some fantasy, not into some empty motivational fairy tale, into real power, the kind built through repetition, through grief, through embarrassment, through restraint, through rebuilding, through saying no when the old you would have begged, through walking away when the old you would have stayed, through keeping quiet when the old you would have overshared, through choosing purpose when the old you would have chosen attention. That is real, and it shows. It shows in your eyes. It shows in your energy. It shows in the way you no longer rush to fill silence. It shows in the way you can feel fake from a mile away. It shows in the way your goals matter more now than being understood by people who never planned to understand you anyway. That's maturity with teeth. And let's say it plainly. Some people miss the broken version of you because it was easier to manage. The broken version doubted itself. The broken version chased closure. The broken version accepted crumbs. The broken version tolerated disrespect just to avoid loneliness. The broken version kept trying to prove worth to people who benefited from its insecurity. But the current version, this version knows better. This version knows that not everyone deserves your full story. This version knows that boundaries are not cruelty. This version knows that being chosen by everybody is not a flex. This version knows that access is expensive. This version knows that peace is a higher status than attention. This version knows that being feared by fake people is not a loss. So let them call you cold. Let them call you intense. Let them call you different. Let them call you too much. Let them call you whatever helps them sleep. They've been calling you names for a long time. And look what happened. Every name they threw at you became a stepping stone. Every insult became resistance training. Every doubt became a challenge. Every betrayal became a lesson. Every abandonment became a redirection. Every humiliation became initiation. You were not being buried. You were being introduced to your threshold. And your threshold is much darker, stronger, and more beautiful than they ever imagined. That's why they can't escape your name now, because your name no longer belongs to the version of you they mocked. It belongs to the version they created by mocking you. Read that again in your soul. They helped build the person who would one day disturb their peace, not because you obsessed over revenge, but because you made a decision. You decided your suffering would not be random. You decided your pain would not be wasted. You decided the disrespect would not be the final chapter. You decided your life would become too real to be laughed off. You decided to turn every private wound into private discipline. You decided to become so grounded in yourself that other people's confusion could no longer rename you. That is identity. That is self-respect. That is force. And once you carry force, people remember you, even if they act like they forgot, even if they pretend they moved on, even if they never say your name out loud again. People remember the ones they misjudged, especially when those people rise. So keep going. Keep building in ways no one can interrupt. Keep protecting your mind like it's sacred. Keep letting silence do some of the talking. Keep becoming more precise, more disciplined, more selective, more dangerous to mediocrity. Keep letting your results create psychological pressure in rooms that once laughed. Keep growing so honestly and so relentlessly that your existence becomes a reminder that disrespect does not decide destiny. And when they hear your name now, let it do what truth does. Let it interrupt. Let it sting. Let it echo. Let it force memory. Let it remind them of every lazy assumption they made when they saw your early stages and thought they were seeing your limits. Look at you, still standing, still breathing, still carrying a silence so heavy that people mistook it for weakness. That was their first mistake. They saw your calm and thought you were soft. They saw your patience and thought you were passive. They saw you hold yourself together while life kept trying to break you. And somehow they turned that into permission. Permission to test you, permission to doubt you, permission to speak to you crazy, permission to move like you were just another easy target in a world full of people too tired to fight back. But that's the funny part, isn't it? They crossed the wrong one. Now the same mouths that laughed are getting quiet. The same eyes that looked past you are starting to stare a little longer. The same people who treated you like background noise are suddenly trying to figure out what exactly they woke up. And now they're asking the question they should have asked before they ever played with your name. Who sent you? Nobody sent you. Pain did. Betrayal did. Those lonely nights did. Being underestimated did. Being counted out did. Being the one people used, ignored, overlooked, dismissed, doubted, lied to, and smiled at with fake respect, while secretly praying you'd never realize your own worth. That did it. That built you. That sharpened you. That turned you into something people can't explain because they weren't there when you were being forged. They only see the result. They see the presence now. They see the control now. They see the way you walk into a room and the energy shifts. They see the way you stopped talking so much and started moving different. They see the way your eyes don't beg anymore. They don't explain anymore. They don't chase anymore. They don't flinch anymore. And that unsettles people. Because broken people are easier to control when they stay broken. Weak people are easier to use when they never discover their strength. But you did the one thing they were hoping you'd never do. You turned your suffering into strategy. You turned your humiliation into hunger. You turned your rejection into fuel. And now your whole existence feels like a threat to the people who benefited from the old version of you. You know what scares them the most? It's not that you got stronger, it's that you got quieter while you were doing it. You stopped announcing your plans. You stopped explaining your heart to people, committed to misunderstanding it. You stopped asking for permission to become who you were always supposed to be. And somewhere in that silence you became dangerous. Not dangerous because you scream, dangerous because you don't need to. That kind of power terrifies people. Because loud weakness is easy to spot. Silent strength, that creeps up on people. that changes the game before anybody even realizes the rules have changed. And let's be real, you didn't become this version of yourself because life was fair. You became this because life was foul. Because at some point you realized nobody was coming to save you. Nobody was going to hand you the respect, the peace, the discipline, the healing, the revenge of success, the mindset, the future. You had to pull all of it out of the darkest parts of yourself with bleeding hands and no applause. That's why your energy hits different now. Because it's earned, not borrowed, not faked, not copied from some trend. Earned. Every scar on your mind taught you something. Every disappointment stripped something fake off of you. Every betrayal introduced you to reality. That's why you don't romanticize people the same way anymore. That's why you read the room faster now. That's why you can hear disrespect in a sentence nobody else would catch. That's why you can feel weird energy before it fully shows its face. You learned the hard way, the expensive way, the kind of learning that costs innocence. And innocence, once it dies, never really comes back the same. That's why your transformation doesn't look cute. It looks real. It looks like boundaries that don't shake just because somebody gets emotional. It looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like walking away without explaining. It looks like discipline when nobody's watching. It looks like not posting every move. It looks like healing without becoming soft enough to be played with again. It looks like ambition with a memory. That's what they weren't ready for. They thought your pain would make you fold. They didn't know your pain was going to introduce you to a version of yourself they'd never be able to control. They thought if they embarrassed you, you'd disappear. They thought if they betrayed you, you'd beg. They thought if they underestimated you, they'd keep the upper hand. But pressure does strange things to certain people. Some people crumble. Some people complain. Some people spend their whole lives explaining why they never became anything. And then there's you. You let it burn. You let it hurt. You let it strip you all the way down to the raw truth. And from that truth, you built something colder, sharper, cleaner, more focused. A version of you that no longer needs to win arguments because you're too busy winning in real life. A version of you that doesn't confuse attention with respect. A version of you that doesn't need to be liked by everyone because you finally understand that being liked and being powerful are not the same thing. Some people only respect consequences. You learned that. You learned that kindness without boundaries gets mistaken for weakness. You learned that generosity without standards attracts parasites. You learned that loyalty given to the wrong people becomes self-betrayal. You learned that every room isn't your room. Every opportunity isn't your opportunity. And every person smiling at you isn't for you. That knowledge changed your whole vibe. Now when people meet you, they feel something they can't quite name. It's not arrogance, it's not anger, it's not ego, it's certainty. It's somebody who has already survived what most people would use as an excuse to give up. It's somebody who has already cried the tears, lost the sleep, took the hits, buried the illusions, and came back with a soul that no longer scares easy. That's why they're confused. They expected damage. They got discipline. They expected drama. They got detachment. They expected a reaction. They got results. That will mess with people more than any speech ever could. Because people know what to do with chaos. They know how to gossip about it. They know how to laugh at it. They know how to weaponize it. But they don't know what to do with someone who got hurt. and came back strategic. They don't know what to do with somebody who turned heartbreak into focus. They don't know what to do with somebody who stopped needing validation and started building value. And once you start building value, everything changes. Your walk changes. Your words change. Your standards change. The way you answer your phone changes. The way you look at opportunities changes. The way you let people access you changes. Suddenly you're not available for nonsense. Suddenly you don't have the energy to argue with people dedicated to staying small. Suddenly you don't find chaos entertaining anymore. Suddenly peace feels expensive. And because you know the price you paid for it, you guard it like your life depends on it. Because it does. And that's when the switch flips. That's when the same people who are comfortable disrespecting you start getting uncomfortable around you. Not because you did anything loud, not because you threatened them, not because you made some dramatic announcement, but because your glow stopped needing their approval. Your progress stopped asking for witnesses. Your discipline stopped negotiating with your feelings. Your silence stopped sounding empty and started sounding dangerous. That's when they start whispering. That's when they start checking your page. That's when they start asking around. That's when your name starts landing in conversations you're not even in. Because now they feel it. Now they can see the cost of misjudging you. Now they can feel the consequences of crossing somebody who knows how to suffer, learn, evolve, and return with receipts. You became the lesson. And the wildest part? You didn't even do it for them. You did it because one day you got sick of your own excuses. You got sick of breaking your own heart by shrinking for people who never planned to love you right. You got sick of betraying your potential just to make insecure people comfortable. You got sick of pretending not to notice the disrespect. You got sick of dimming your mind, your ambition, your intuition, your fire, your edge. You got tired of abandoning yourself. That kind of tired changes a person. Not the tired that sleep fixes, the tired that truth fixes, the tired that finally says, enough. Enough fake love. Enough fake friendships. Enough fake support. Enough self-doubt. Enough waiting. Enough giving people one more chance to show you the same ugly pattern in a different outfit. At some point, you stopped asking why it happened and started asking what it was trying to turn you into. That question saved you. Because once pain becomes a teacher instead of just a wound, you stop drowning in it. You start using it. You start listening differently. You start noticing that every disrespect was exposing your weak spots. Every betrayal was revealing where your boundaries were broken. Every disappointment was showing you where your expectations were naive. Every loss was clearing space for a version of you that could no longer be built inside comfort. Comfort never made you. Conflict did. Silence did. Solitude did. That season where nobody checked on you like they said they would. That did something to you. That season where you had to smile in public and bleed in private. That changed you. That season where you realized some people only loved the version of you they could control. That woke you up. And now you're awake in a way that makes other people nervous. Good. Let them be nervous. You were nervous when life started stripping everything fake away from you. You were nervous when your trust got shattered. You were nervous when your heart was heavy and your future looked blurry. You were nervous when nobody clapped for the work you were doing behind closed doors, but you kept moving. That's the difference. You kept moving when it was ugly. You kept moving when it was unfair. You kept moving when nobody understood the assignment on your life, including you. And because you kept moving, the version of you standing here now carries something rare. Proof. Proof that being overlooked is not the same as being ordinary. Proof that silence is not the same as weakness. Proof that patience is not the same as submission. Proof that some people are peaceful only because they haven't been forced to show what else they are capable of becoming. And maybe that's what they're finally seeing now. Maybe that's why they can't read you the way they used to. Maybe that's why their little games stopped working. Maybe that's why your absence hits harder than your presence used to. Maybe that's why they're trying to figure out who put this level of pressure inside you. Nobody put it there. Life carved it there. Loss carved it there. Disrespect carved it there. Discipline carved it there. All those days you wanted to quit but didn't, carved it there. All those moments you felt alone but kept building anyway, carved it there. Every time you chose growth over revenge, silence over begging, standards over loneliness, purpose over distraction, carved it there. That is why your presence feels heavier now, because you're not carrying hope alone anymore. You're carrying evidence, evidence that you can survive the kind of pain that rearranges people. Evidence that you can be doubted without becoming doubtful. Evidence that you can be hated without becoming helpless. Evidence that you can be betrayed without becoming broken beyond repair. That kind of energy makes people recalculate everything. Now they're wondering if they read you wrong. Yes, they did. They mistook your grace for fragility. They mistook your heart for weakness. They mistook your restraint for fear. They mistook your delays for denial. They mistook your silence for emptiness. And now they're staring at a version of you that feels like a consequence they never prepared for. That's what happens when people get too comfortable disrespecting somebody who's still in the middle of becoming. They think the chapter they met is the whole book. They think your current struggle is your final form. They think the season where you're quiet means the story is over. No. That was just the training ground. That was the part where your soul was learning how not to break under pressure. That was the part where your standards were getting rebuilt. That was the part where your instincts were being sharpened. That was the part where you were learning not everybody deserves the softest version of you. Now you know better. Now you know energy is currency. Now you know attention is expensive. Now you know access should be earned. Now you know not everybody clapping for you wants you to win. Now you know the difference between somebody who loves your light and somebody who just likes how easily they can use it. That knowledge is armor. And when you move through life with armor built from experience, people feel it before you even speak. That's why the room changes. That's why fake people get awkward. That's why manipulators start testing softer and subtler. That's why insecure people start projecting harder. That's why people who once ignored you suddenly want to check in. They're not always checking in because they care. Sometimes they're checking in because they can feel you slipping out of the version of yourself they were used to accessing. Sometimes they can feel that you no longer need what they used to offer. Sometimes they can feel the distance between your current mindset and their old control. And distance scares people who are benefiting from your confusion. But confusion doesn't live here anymore. Not like that. Now you know who you are when nobody is hyping you. Now you know what you can survive. Now you know what it means to keep going with tears in your eyes and fire in your chest. Now you know you are not hard to love. You are just surrounded by people too shallow to understand your depth. Now you know being alone is 1,000 times better than being misled. Now you know peace has a price, and you're finally willing to pay it. Now you know your future cannot be built with the same habits, same wounds, same access points, same weak boundaries that kept your past bleeding into everything. So you cut it off. You outgrew it. You moved different. You got disciplined when distraction was easier. You got focused when revenge was tempting. You got sharper when laziness was calling. You started building a life that looks boring to unserious people and beautiful to your future self. That's power. Real power. Not just talking spicy, not just looking tough, not just posting quotes. Power is waking up every day and refusing to betray the person you're becoming. Power is staying solid when nobody notices. Power is keeping your word to yourself. Power is making your enemies search for an explanation while you keep stacking proof. And trust me, the world notices proof. Maybe not immediately, maybe not loudly, maybe not in the moment you feel like you deserve it, but eventually they notice. Eventually the results get too obvious to ignore. Eventually the glow gets too real to deny. Eventually the discipline starts speaking on your behalf. Eventually the same people who laughed at your process start copying your routine. Eventually the same ones who doubted your vision start acting like they always knew you had it in you. Eventually the same room that didn't clap has to sit there and watch what you became. That's when it hits them. That's when the weight of crossing you lands in their chest. That's when they realize they didn't just disrespect a person. They disrespected a process. They disrespected a survivor. They disrespected somebody heaven, hell, pain, pressure, and isolation had already been training in private. That's why they're asking who sent you. Because ordinary pressure doesn't create this. Ordinary heartbreak doesn't create this. Ordinary people don't come out of what you came out of with this much presence, this much focus, this much fire in their eyes. But you are not ordinary. Not because you were born above pain, because you refused to stay beneath it. You climbed through it. You learned through it. You mastered parts of yourself in darkness that most people never even meet in daylight. And now, when life calls your name, you answer different. Now when disrespect shows up, it doesn't confuse you. Now when temptation shows up, it doesn't own you. Now when fear shows up, it doesn't stop you. Because you've already met the version of yourself that survives worst-case scenarios. Once you meet that version of yourself, a lot of things lose their power over you. That's what they feel. That's what they can't explain. That's why your name tastes different in their mouth now. That's why your presence feels like a warning. That's why your silence feels louder than their whole performance. Because you are no longer the person they crossed. You are the result of crossing that person. And results are a scary thing to people who only believed in your limits. So let them wonder. Let them question. Let them stare.